Did you know that sometimes the people we trust to make our community a better place can become the greatest threat to our peace and happiness? This is a story about a family, their home, and a battle for justice that nobody saw coming. Picture a small neighborhood, a community where everyone is supposed to feel safe, supported, and treated fairly. This community is governed by a homeowners association, a group that is meant to keep the neighborhood looking nice and make sure everything runs smoothly. But what happens when the person in charge, the HOA president, starts using that power to destroy someone's life instead? This is the story of a man, a former sheriff, who owns a historic ranch, a ranch that means everything to him and his family. His ranch is not just a piece of land, it is a symbol of their history, their struggles, and their ability to hold on to something that belongs to them. But the HOA president, a woman named Karen, decided that this ranch was a threat. She decided to abuse her power in order to make their lives a nightmare. Karen falsely accused the ranch's owner of breaking community rules. She turned neighbors against him by spreading lies and fear, stories that the ranch was a danger to the community's health, safety, and financial future. She forced him to pay unfair fines, made him appear in hearings, and tried to make him lose everything he had. All this was a way for her to destroy him and take control. But what Karen did not know is that the ranch's owner was a former sheriff, someone who knew the law, who knew justice, and who was not afraid to fight back. This is a dramatic story about a community turning against a man, a powerful person, gone mad with control, and a battle for justice that shows us that the truth can conquer even the strongest forms of unfairness. So stay with us, because you are about to see a story of abuse of power, a community manipulated by a lie, and a man's eventual triumph over injustice. This is a story you do not want to miss. Things started to spiral out of control when Karen, the HOA president, began to use her power in a way that nobody expected. She was supposed to be the person who kept the community safe and happy, someone we could trust. But instead, Karen turned her power into a weapon, a way to destroy someone's life. It all started with small complaints. The grass was a little too tall, the fence was a bit over the limit, or the ranch was a danger to the community's safety. None of these complaints were true, but Karen used them as a way to attack the ranch's owner. Each new violation came with heavy fines, penalties, and stress, turning his peaceful home into a nightmare. When the ranch's owner tried to explain or show proof that he was following the community's guidelines, Karen ignored him. She kept adding new violations, one after another, until he fell further into financial trouble. His family started to suffer, worried that they might lose their home, the place that meant everything to them. But Karen was not finished yet. She called for surprise inspections, sending officials to search every corner of his property, looking for something, anything to accuse him of. Fear started spreading through the community. Neighbors whispered quietly, afraid that if they stood up for him, Karen might come after them too. The ranch's owner was backed into a corner, but he was not powerless. His years as a former sheriff meant he knew the law. He knew exactly what he needed to do to gather the proof, the forged documents, the false complaints, the unfair penalties, everything he needed to show the community and the authorities the real story. He decided he would not let Karen win. He would fight back, and what he was about to uncover would shock everyone, turning the community against Karen and turning the tables in a dramatic showdown for justice. Stay with us, because the best is yet to come. This is a battle for fairness, for the truth, and for the future of their community. While Karen thought that the ranch's owner was powerless, she made a big mistake by underestimating him. The ranch's owner was not just someone without a way to fight back, he was a former sheriff. He knew the law, he knew how to gather proof, and he knew that justice would be on his side in the end. He began collecting every piece of information he could, all the violation notices, the forged documents, the unfair penalties. He kept them safely together. He made copies of everything, and he kept careful notes of dates, names, and details, a complete record that proved something was very, very wrong. He interviewed his neighbors, the ones who had been forced to pay unfair fines, the ones who were afraid to speak up, the ones who saw Karen's abuse of power up close. Some decided to break their silence. They shared their stories of unfair treatment, unfair penalties, and growing fear in their own community. All of this backed up his case. He even hired a lawyer to advise him and make sure everything was documented in a way that would hold up in a court of law. His lawyer explained that what Karen was doing was not just unfair, it was unlawful. This meant that Karen could be held accountable for her crimes. As the ranch's owner kept collecting the proof, a clear picture started to emerge. This was not a small dispute. This was a dramatic story of power, corruption, forged documents, and a community forced into silence. The ranch's owner was turning the tables. The hunter was becoming the hunted. He prepared his case carefully. He made sure every piece of information was factual, clear, and backed by the law. His intent was not revenge, it was justice. All he wanted was the peace, fairness, and dignity that his family deserved, and for the community to be a place where the people are treated with honesty and fairness. The moment was soon going to come when Karen would face the consequences for her actions, a moment when the community would learn the truth and justice would be restored. This was the turning point, when the ranch's owner decided to take a stand, not just for his family, but for everyone's future. Karen was not finished yet. In her quest for power, she turned to something even more sinister, turning the community against the ranch's owner. Karen started spreading rumors and misinformation, stories that were not true, but that made people afraid. She said the ranch was a danger to their children, their health, their safety, even their financial future. Some neighbors began to believe these stories. They whispered to each other. They avoided the rancher's owner. They kept their children away. Fear started to grow, and Karen used the fear to control the community. She called for community meetings. She encouraged homeowners to vote against him, to fine him even more, to prohibit him from making repairs, and to restrict his ability to care for his own property. All of this was meant to break him down. Karen wanted him to lose everything, his ranch, his peace, his happiness, until he was forced to move away. But something was starting to happen, something Karen hadn't expected. The ranch's owner kept collecting proof, and many community members started to realize the truth. Some of them quietly came forward. They shared their stories of unfair treatment, forged documents, penalties, and violation notices that made no sense. Some neighbors began to question Karen's motives. Why was she so eager to destroy this family's ranch? Why was she turning their community against a man who had been a helpful and kind neighbor for years? One by one, the community started turning against Karen. Fear was slowly turning into outrage, a growing understanding that something was very, very wrong. The ranch's owner, with his careful notes, his growing stack of documents, and the testimony of his neighbors, was slowly turning the tables. He was not a victim, he was a fighter. And now, the community was beginning to see him for what he truly was, someone who was battling for fairness, justice, and the future of their community. This was a turning point, the moment when the community decided it would no longer be blinded by Karen's lies, and when justice was within reach. The moment everyone had been waiting for was finally here, the moment when justice would be done. The ranch's owner had spent months collecting proof, organizing documents, interviewing community members, and preparing his case. Now he was ready to bring everything into the light, for the community, for the law, and for justice. The ranch's owner stood up in a community meeting in the presence of the homeowners, the board, the lawyers, and even Karen herself. His hands trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from the immense pressure of delivering the truth. This was a showdown, a moment that would determine his future and the future of their community. He presented his stack of forged documents, penalties that were not real, complaints made up by Karen, financial transactions that fell into her pocket instead of community repairs. All of this was supported by testimony from neighbors, financial experts, and a team of lawyers who had investigated the case. The room fell silent as the ranch's owner connected the dots, piece by piece, until there was no doubt about what had really happened. Some people in the community cried quietly as they listened, tears for the unfairness, for the way their trust had been broken. Others grew angry, not just at Karen, but at a system that had allowed her to exploit her power for her own gain. When Karen was called forward to answer for her crimes, for forged documents, for false penalties, for turning the community against a man whose only wish was fairness, she fell silent. Her defenses fell apart. Her lawyers could not provide explanations for the growing pile of proof. The community, the board, and the court decided together. Karen would be held accountable. She was forced to pay back the financial penalties and to face additional penalties under the law for forgery and fraud. Furthermore, Karen was removed from her position as HOA president, banned from serving on the board in the future, and forced to make amends for the harm she had done. The community began to heal. Neighbors started talking to each other again. Fear was replaced by understanding. Suspicious glances turned into kindness and compassion. The ranch's owner was recognized for his patience, for his fairness, and for honoring justice, even when it seemed impossible. This moment marked a new era for the community, a time when fairness, honesty, and unity would guide their future. The ranch was not just a piece of land, it was a symbol of justice and a powerful reminder that the truth will always come out in the end. In the end, justice prevailed. But this story is about much more than just punishment for the person who did something wrong. It is a story about resilience, about the power to stand up when you are attacked, about the ability to keep going, even when things seem unfair or impossible. The ranch's owner stayed strong. He kept his faith in the law, in fairness, and in the community. Because of his struggles, the community came together in a way it hadn't before. Neighbors began to talk honestly with each other. They decided to make sure something like this would never happen again. Rules were put in place to bring greater fairness and openness, and the homeowners chose new leadership that would reflect their values of justice, kindness, and unity. The ranch itself stands today as a symbol of resilience, a symbol that no matter how much power someone might abuse, the truth will eventually come out and justice will win. The ranch's owner kept his land, kept his dignity, and kept his peace, proving that a community can heal after conflict when fairness guides its way forward. This is a story for everyone, a reminder that when we stand up for the truth, when we care for each other, and when we do not let unfair people destroy our happiness, we become stronger together, because justice is not just for the few, it belongs to us all.